Hello, and welcome to the Dalton Public Library's Black History Month readings titled Our Black History. I'm Betty, and I'm going to tell you about George Moses Horton. George Moses Horton was born in 1798. Born a slave on William Horton's tobacco plantation, George Moses Horton taught himself to read. Around 1815, at age 17, he began composing poems in his head, speaking them aloud, and selling them to an increasingly large crowd of appreciative listeners at the weekly Chapel Hill Farmers Market. Students at the nearby University of North Carolina, a school he could not attend, also bought his love poems and loaned him books. With the help of an NCU English professor's wife, he published his first collection of poetry entitled The Hope of Liberty in 1829. He was the first African American man to publish a book in the South, and one of the first to publicly protest his slavery through his poetry. Horton learned to write in 1832, finally. With the help and the monies earned from selling his written poems at $3 per page, he was able to purchase his time out from his owner so he could become a full-time poet, handyman, and servant at the university. He appealed for his freedom for 30 years, unsuccessfully. He wrote a second collection of poetry entitled The Poetical Works in 1845. After the Civil War ended, he settled in Philadelphia for 17 years of freedom after 68 years of being a slave. He died in 1883. George Moses Horton. I read to you today a poem by George Moses Horton, who lived from 1798 to 1883. This poem is about the Civil War, the horror, the aftermath was the war that took place within his time. But it applies to our time right now, which makes it just as pertinent today as it was back then. This poem is entitled Weep. Weep for the country in its present state, and for the gloom which still the future waits. The proud Confederate eagle heard the sound, and with her flight fell prostrate to the ground. Weep for the loss the country has sustained, by which her now dependent is in jail. The grief for whom now the war has survived, the conscript husbands and their weeping wives. Weep for the seas of blood the battle cost, and souls that ever hope, forever lost. The ravage of the field with no recruit, trees by the vengeance blasted to the root. Weep for the downfall over your heads and chief, who sunk without a medium of relief, who fell beneath the hatchet of their pride, then like the serpent bit themselves and died. Weep for the downfall of your president, who far too late his folly must repent, who like the dragon did all heavens assail, then dragged his friends to limbo with his tail. Weep, or peculiar swelling coffers void, our treasures left, and all their banks destroyed, their foundless notes replete with shame to all, expecting every day their final fall, in quest of profit, never to be won, then sadly fallen and forever down.